God didn't tell me to shut up, you thief asked me to shut up. You. The old lady Su of Nyuan Haofu, a jeweled treasure, and a jade hairpin on her head because the old lady jumped up and cursed, fell to the ground and fell in half. This made the old lady's cursing pause. Because of distress, Mrs. Su began to yell more fiercely. In the embroidered building in the backyard of the home mansion, Zhang Minjiao opened her eyes in the voice of her grandmother's screams. The sun shone in from the window lattice and directly onto Zhang Minjiao's eyes, which made Zhang Minjiao, who had not seen the light for a long time, I shed tears. Minjiao, are you awake? There was a voice from the bedside, and the eldest sister Zhang Yui stretched her head to see her sister. Bah! You are a slave who kills 1,000 knives. Minjiao. Zhang Minjiao's expression was in a trance between the grandmother's piercing arrows and the screams that could pierce the ground, and the anxious and concerned screams of the elder sister. This is not right. The sun outside the window is just right. Grandma Su's screams are full of anger. Her eldest sister looks like a living person. She doesn't seem to be in the underworld. Why are you still crying? Zhang Yui sat down on the edge of the bed, took a handkerchief to wipe Zhang Minjiao's tears, and said distressed, what's the use of crying? Your marriage, Minjiao, tell the truth with your eldest sister, what do you think? Of marriage? Zhang Minjiao put her hand on the bed board, and suddenly sat up on the bed, her cheeks flushed from the heat, the blood faded and turned pale. What's the matter with you? Zhang Yui said anxiously. Mother Zhou said, you heard that the princess had found you the son of King Tishan as your husband-in-law. Because she was so happy, she fainted. Grandma doesn't believe it, just now. In the front yard, you are going to work hard with Mother Zhou. Tell your eldest sister, what is going on. If something happens to my Minjiao the old lady fights this old bone, you and your master, don't think about a single one. You are talking. Zhang Yui became even more anxious. Is this really going to let their grandma kill? Zhang Minjiao turned her head and looked out the window. Several peach blossoms outside the window were blooming brightly. This is the season when the march grass grows and the warbler is flying. The second young lady of the Zhang family looked at the spring scenery outside the window and thought, how can she talk to her elder sister? Say it. It is said that in the 17th year of Emperor Yin dynasty Dongsheng, she, the elder consort of Tishan Prince, would be killed by a single blow, and would the eldest son of Tishan Zhao Lingxiao be beheaded in front of the two armies? Eldest sister, I died once and came back alive, Zhang Minjiao said to Zhang Yui in a soft voice, welcoming the spring of March, I really miss you. Zhang Yui. Are you stupefied? Ms. Zhang, the second grandmother of Ningguo Gong's mansion raised her hand and slapped her sister on the head. A girl who is still alive and dead? Why? You are on Huangchuan Road. I found the elixir from the top, and I am a human being again. Zhang Minjiao was clutching her painful head, but she still looked at Zhang Yui and smiled, making her scalp numb. No matter if she was happy to dizzy, she thought her sister was crazy. Zhang Minjiao took a deep breath out of the window, smelling the sweet fragrance of peach blossoms. The second lady of the Zhang family hurriedly recalled her own life. Nyuan Hozhang entered the autumn. His former name was Zhang Erniu, that is, Zhang Minjiao's father. He was born in the mud legs of the farm. Fortunately, he got acquainted with the emperor when the emperor Dongsheng was in trouble. After that, the mud legs followed Dongsheng. The emperor entered the capital city from the frontier fortress in the bitter cold, and Zhang Erniu, who made the merits of the dragon, became Zhang Ruqiu, and was also admired by the cousin of Emperor Dongsheng Zhao Qingrong. So Yun, who was the original wife of Zhan Zhan, who had raised 2 sons and 2 daughters for Zhang Jingkaiu, died, and Princess Zhao Qingrong of Ronghua became Zhang Jingkaiu's wife. After Zhao Qingrong's mediator, the 16-year-old Zhang Minjiao married Zhao Lingxiao and became the son and concubine of King Tishan. 20-year-old Zhao Lingxiao, a well-known young man named nobleman, both civil and military, and a man who loves countless spring girls. When Zhang Minjiao got married, it was the envy, jealous, and hateful enemy of the girls of the whole Jingxi, because she took away the young man of their dreams. But the result? Zhao Lingxiao had another love. Zhang Minjiao married into the palace, that is, lived alone in a courtyard of the palace. It was not until 11 years later that Emperor Dongsheng broke off his heirs, that is, his son died. King Tishan and the 7 feudal kings fought for the throne. Zhang Ruqiu led the rebellion, and Zhang Minjiao was tied to the front of the 2 armies by Zhao Lingxiao. You can't force your father to withdraw his troops, I also want him to taste the pain of bereavement. Zhao Lingxiao told Zhang Minjiao this way. Afterwards, Zhang Minjiao smashed the rope-lock, snatched Zhao Lingxiao's saber, cut it down, and cut Zhao Lingxiao's heart out of her face. For 11 years as a husband and wife, you didn't even know that I could martial arts. Zhang Minjiao remembered that she told Zhao Lingxiao this way. In the end, the son of Lingxiao couldn't catch his eyes. Zhang Minjiao was hacked and killed by the Tishan army. Her father, who was the leader of the army and the head of the 3 armies, was looking forward to winning the battle, and even her body could not be retrieved. This was Zhang Minjiao's life before. God didn't tell me to shut up. In the front yard, Mrs. Su was still shouting angrily. Zhang Minjiao looked down at her white and tender hands, thinking, God asked me to come back and live again. Bah! Old Mrs. Su spit out, don't look at the skinny and dryness of the old lady, but with such a spit, the old lady spit out murderously, people will feel it when they look at it, standing opposite the old lady. Mother Zhou suffered thousands of cuts and died on the spot without exceeding her life. Mother Zhou was born as a court lady, and now she is waiting next to Princess Ronghua Zhao Qingrong. To be honest, the watchdogs at the Prime Minister's gate are all third-rank officials. Mother Zhou is under the name of a royal slave in the Imperial Palace and the Princess Mansion. Outside, you can walk sideways unscrupulously. Mother Zhou couldn't remember herself, when was the last time she was scolded by someone pointing her nose. But you want Mother Zhou to scold Mrs. Su? Grandma Zhou can't do such things. The minions in the Imperial Palace can play tricks behind their backs, but shrews usually scream at their throats. The royal minions need a face. If it's not right to curse, should Mother Zhou and Mrs. Su just have a fight? This old lady Su is Zhang Ruqiu's mother-in-law, and Zhang Ruqiu is the husband of Mother Zhou's master. Mother Zhou dare to fight? The humiliation came suddenly, and there was no way to avoid it, and there was no way to escape. Mother Zhou was so embarrassed that she saw that Mrs. Su was spitting on her face. Finally, Mother Zhou couldn't hold herself back and she hid her face and cried. Stand up! Who did she provoke? The princess of her family tried her best to find the husband-in-law of Prince Tishan for the second lady in the house. The second lady was born in a farmer, and she was so small that she couldn't bear the great things of the day, so she fainted. What's the servant girl? Mother Zhou is more aggrieved for herself and her own princess. Princess Ronghua is the only daughter of the prince. Nowadays, the cousin of Emperor Dongsheng is a serious cousin. The Prince Jing was killed when he was fighting with Emperor Dongsheng. Yes, Princess Jing heard of the death of the prince, and was overwhelmed. She died of illness within 3 months and followed the prince. Just for Prince Jing died for Emperor Dongsheng. Can Emperor Dongsheng take good care of his only daughter? Looking at Emperor Dongsheng's dynasty, apart from Zhao Qingrong, how many of the prince's daughters were canonized princesses? Are they all the princess? But her princess just fell in love with Zhang Ruqiu. There is a husband of a wife, and the children are not counted. Zhang Ruqiu is still a mud-legged man, and he only learned to recognize words after he joined the army. Mother Zhou has never figured out what her princess master is like. Are you still crying? I tell you, this thief woman, my bright moon. Old Mrs. Su cursed in full anger. Milk, Zhang Minjiao shouted standing in the Chihua gate. Old Lady Su turned around in a hurry, listening to the voice, her Minjiu seemed to be fine. Zhang Minjiu stepped towards the old lady, and her sister Zhang Yui chased her behind. Old lady Su looked at the two sisters in tandem. It was not that the old lady was eccentric. The sisters both hurt her, but the old lady had to acknowledge that compared with Zhang Minjiu, who is more beautiful than Hua Jiao, her Yuer is a sweet potato egg. From face to figure, nothing is good. Second miss. Mother Zhou called out the old lady before she could speak. Zhang Minjiu glanced at Mother Zhou, and before she could speak, Mrs. Su's arm was twisted severely. Zhang Minjiu forced her to resist and didn't grin and shout pain. You got me down, the old lady whispered to Zhang Minjiu, if Zhao Qingrong is a good thing, she can't off your mother. Can she be kind enough to find you a good person? Zhang Minjiu sighed, this matter, she wanted to understand it in her previous life, if you want to say it is strange, you can't blame Zhao Qingrong. Zhao Qingrong is a true princess, but Tishan King is also from the royal family, or the real power prince who leads the army to guard one side. What is Zhao Qingrong's ability to protect her as a matchmaker? Besides, the two families get married, it is the right family. Zhang Ruqiu is not a fake ho yet, but what is their Zhang family's background? Born in mud legs in the country. Zhao Lingxiao's not marrying low, it's hitting him and Su Shan Palace's face, it's the kind of crackling. Your eyes are rolling, old Mrs. Su looked at Zhang Minjiu with a vigilant look, and whispered in a vicious voice, what are you doing? In this human world, in the eyes of Mrs. Su, Hanjian is desperate. God is the most fair to others. If he gives you a beautiful face, then he can no longer give you the blessing of peace and smoothness in your life. And what is more terrible than a confidant? I don't have any blessings anymore, I still have a lot of thoughts. I just hate myself for not dying fast enough. But, her Minjiu is occupied by both. At this moment, Mrs. Su looks at Zhang Minjiu and suddenly feels upset. Incomparably, why is this dead girl so uneasy? Grandma, Zhang Minjiu walked to Grandma Zhou and clapped her hands to tidy up her somewhat scattered hair. Ms. Zhang Er's behavior made Mother Zhou more convinced, but the old lady Su was so angry that she almost didn't fall to the ground and scolded her for a long time. Is she self-satisfied? Seeing that her grandma was about to fry, Zhang Yui hurried to pull the old lady, to prevent the old lady from rushing up, and cleaned up Zhang Minjiu and Mother Zhou. Grandma, I listened to the old lady about the big things like marriage, Zhang Minjiu said after she wiped away the tears for Mother Zhou with a silk handkerchief. I only listened to the old lady about this matter. The angered old lady Su was not going to eat people anymore, and she didn't feel worried anymore. Seeing off, the old lady said to the other stewards who were standing by. Quickly, Zhang Yui saw that some of the stewards were still stupid, and urged in a hurry. Finally, the old lady was willing to let go of Mother Zhou, so she didn't hurry to send her away. Grandma go back, Zhang Minjiu smiled at Grandma Zhou. After Mother Zhou was sent out of Enyuanho's mansion like a plague, she was never recovered from the shrewd Mother Zhou. It's not a big deal to be scolded by old lady Su pointing her nose and slobbering, so the second lady of the Zhang family rejected Zhao Lingxiao, the son of Tishan King? Does this second Miss Zhang don't know that the elder son is good, or is this one who doesn't know good or bad at all? You still laugh at her. Not to mention that Mother Zhou was in a daze outside the home mansion. In the home mansion, Mrs. Su poked her finger behind Zhang Minjiu's forehead and said with dissatisfaction, you girl, you just don't know what is good or bad. Zhao Qingrong is not a good thing. Did she ask for a marriage certificate for you, or did she ask for a marriage from the sage? No, she sent someone to you to talk nonsense? She is damaging your reputation. Are you still? Laugh. Zhang Minjiu smiled and turned her grandmother's arm, and whispered, don't laugh, I still cry at the other person, Grandma Zhou. Go back to the room and say, Mrs. Su patted Zhang Minjiu's hand without amusement, and walked a few steps in the direction of Xiahua Hall. The old lady stopped again and shouted at the flower stand under the left wall of the courtyard, "Old man, what are you doing standing there? How many flowers are worth when you look at it like this?" The old man Zhang, who had been standing in front of the flower stand silently, just said hey at this time, and walked towards his old wife with his hands behind his back. "Who's man in the courtyard? They really forgot, the old man is standing here." Zhang Minjiao looked at the grandfather who came slowly to her side. Suddenly she was embarrassed, standing in the yard talking for a long time. She didn't realize that her father was also standing in the yard. Old man Zhang, who is named San Zhuang, has planted for a lifetime. After his second son was born, he followed his second son to the capital. When farming at home, outside the house, the person who is in charge of the big and small things is Su's family. If you don't farm the land, the person who is in charge of the big and small things is still the Su's outside the house. The old man has his own invisibility. If you don't speak, others won't notice him, just talk, and there are not many times when others can notice him. Milk, the family of four sat in the flower hall, watching the old lady drove the people out, and the hall door was closed. Zhang Yui finally couldn't hold it back anymore, and said, "You see, this thing makes you it's troublesome, what a nice person, King Tishan." Old Mrs. Su said in an unpleasant manner, "What's the matter? Are you also fascinated by the elder son?" Milk. Zhang Yui's face flushed suddenly. If her old lady's words come out, can she still return to Ningguo's mansion? The son of the elder is handsome, the old man rarely spoke on his own initiative. Zhang Minjiao was a little surprised. Her grandpa grows vegetables in the back garden of the home mansion all day long. How come the grandpa has seen Zhao Lingxiao? When I went to Dongjia to look for Wang Erxias the day before yesterday, Wang Shizi of Tishan rode a horse and beat the one who was in front of me. The old man looked at Zhang Minjiao and said, "He is handsome." "Okay, don't talk anymore," Mrs. Su yelled again while pulling her throat. With this grandfather and sister, they wanted to match Zhang Minjiao and Zhao Lingxiao together? "Don't talk about looks, Milk, what's so bad about Tishan Palace?" Zhang Yui asked puzzledly. Zhang Minjiao was married to her concubine. When her son becomes the king of Tishan, her sister will be concubine Tishan. There is a marriage. What is bad? Miss Zhang really didn't understand. Old Mrs. Su rolled her eyes and did not roll out of the sky. Just about to get angry, she turned her head to look at Zhang Minjiao. The second girl was sitting on the wooden chair with her hands on her lap. Seeing her looking over, she hooked her mouth. Laughed. Ouch, the old lady had a headache. "Wei Minjiao is beautiful." Seeing Zhang Minjiao smiling, the old man praised his second granddaughter again. "You don't want to eat tonight, just watch your granddaughter live," Mrs. Su angrily said to the old man, "Just a good-looking one can live a life? Even if it can, only your granddaughter is a good-looking one in the world. The girls from other people's houses are ugly." The old man coughed and stopped speaking. "Milk, I won't marry," Zhang Minjiao said hurriedly, seeing the old lady looking at herself again. "I'm your relatives, can I not expect you to be good?" Old Mrs. Su said, "Zhao Lingxiao is good, but he is the elder son of Tishan King's mansion. Who are we? Your father is still growing vegetables in the mansion. What if your father is an Yuanho? Before he was 20, he was not also farming at home? You said, this son of Tishan King married you, what did he picture?" Zhang Minjiao pursed her mouth. Zhao Lingxiao and Tishan Prince's mansion wouldn't think of her, but the long-lived master in the imperial palace asked her to be his eyeliner. In the previous life, she took the maid-in-law of Tishan Palace, as well as the small servant, who belonged to Emperor Dongsheng. The current sage, his own throne came bloody, he also prevented others from taking his throne like this. The Tishan Palace was only one place he was guarding, Zhang Minjiao guessed, but long-lived masters who have soldiers in their hands are guarding it. There were not many courtiers of the Manchu civil and military who could truly gain the trust of Emperor Dongsheng. Among the generals who led the troops, Emperor Dongsheng seemed to only trust her father Zhang into the autumn. As for the Tishan Palace, Emperor Dongshen's thoughts also knew that Zhao Lingxiao's reputation was so great that it was all over the prince. Can the Tishan Palace be afraid of Emperor Dongsheng cleaning them up? To marry her Zhang Minjiu, in the Tishan Palace, it was just an acknowledgement of Dongsheng Emperor. The son of the dignified Tishan king, a young man with a beautiful moon, marrying a daughter of a martial artist, this is to make the world laugh. What's more, not to mention that this martial artist is not an honorable man, but a farmer with mud legs. Don't tell me, you will be the concubine after you marry, Mrs. Su said bitterly at this moment. Then how do the little princes next to Tishan Palace marry wives? According to the rules of the family, the younger brother's your daughter-in-law cannot be born higher than your concubine, so I will ask you, how do you live after the Tishan prince's mansion? Are they shameless? Yes, Zhang Minjiu clasped her fingers, or how to say, this is Tishan prince's acknowledgement to Emperor Dongsheng. Emperor Dongsheng had such an idea, and Tishan prince's mansion recognized it. This is the surrender of Tishan and his son, and it has nothing to do with her Zhang Minjiu. What is she doing bad? Zhao Qingrong, I haven't figured it out yet, Mrs. Su said, but we just need to remember that this woman is not a good person and it's over. Milk. Zhang Yui looked at the door of the flower hall and whispered, she is a princess anyway, so don't scold her. God didn't tell me to shut up, did your girl make me shut up? Zhang Yui's words directly annoyed the old lady again. Looking at her sister who stood up and pleaded wrong and apologized, Zhang Minjiu's mouth was silent. Filial piety, the old lady, who is a mother-in-law, was born to crush Zhao Qingrong, who is a daughter-in-law. Also, looking at the old lady who Jensun Zhang Yui, Zhao Qingrong is shameless about marrying into Jiang's house. In other matters, Zhao Qingrong is quite shameless, but what about this old lady? What's the face? The face is just a fart. The old lady said loudly. Zhang Minjiu pursed her mouth and smiled, let's see, how could Zhao Qingrong fight this old lady? Besides, Zhao Qingrong gave your face to her. The old lady asked Zhang Yui. Zhang Yui has already regretted it, why does she owe her lips? I saved the life of the saint. The old lady said. Here we go again. The old man covered his face with his big hand, and this old woman in his family is going to remember that year again. Zhang Minjiu continued to buckle her finger. When Emperor Dongsheng was in trouble, the guards around him were dead. The killer sent by the concubine Gao followed behind him. Emperor Dongsheng jumped into the lake to escape, if not for his own old lady to escape from the lake. When he fished it out, Emperor Dongsheng had already become a water ghost. Emperor Dongsheng hid in Jiang's family for half a year, and recognized the old lady as godfather. The 4 sons of the Haojiang family, except for the eldest son who stayed at home to farm, the other 3 followed Emperor Dongsheng. Only the second one survived. Autumn alone. Emperor Dongsheng killed the brothers and slaughtered his younger brothers, and the queen's palace was slaughtered all over again, and his body was also known for his good reputation. So, Zhang Minjiu gave Zhao Qingrong a handful of tears in his heart. As long as the old lady without killing Zhao Qingrong, Emperor Dongsheng could hold his godmother and pretend to see nothing. Don't look at your elder sister's excitement, Mrs. Su said, so that the granddaughter lowered her head and said nothing, and pointed the finger at Zhang Minjiu again, you are not as good as your elder sister. Zhang Minjiu looked up at Zhang Yui, the smile on Zhang Yui's face was embarrassing. Zhang Minjiu sighed slightly. Zhang Yui had not lived as long as her in her last life. After she married and left Beijing, she entered the Tishan Palace, but within 1 year, news came from the capital that her sister had died of dystocia. In this life, Zhang Minjiu looked at Zhang Yui in a daze. She told Zhang Yui not to have this child. Did she help her sister survive this death? Your eldest sister left Ningguo Gongfu, she still has the ability to weave embroidery, no matter how bad she is, she will raise chickens and ducks, Mrs. Su said, what will you do? Zhang Minjiu. Don't be the eyeliner of Emperor Dongsheng, what can you do in this life? Zhang Minjiu was a little confused by what her grandmother said. She wants to live a good life, but you have to have a constitution for this life. Where is she going to find this constitution now? You don't know anything about the craftsmanship of life, Mrs. Su said to Zhang Minjiu. Do you still see your eldest sister's joke? My Minjiu, you can worry about yourself. Old lady. The shout of the young man outside the flower hall interrupted the old lady's scolding of Zhang Minjiu. Is it Basehu? Mrs. Su asked. Zhang Minjiu didn't recognize this child named Basehu until she saw her. This was the young man who followed her elder brother Jianjiu. The 3 young masters and the 4 young masters are fighting. Basehu entered the flower hall and burst into tears. 18-year-old boy in Basehu's tiger head and brain, there is no visible injury on his face, but when the child cried with his nose and tears, Mrs. Su understood that this fight, this grandson was beaten. Fight, fight! Poor Zhang Yui had just sat down, and after hearing Basehu's words, she jumped up from the chair again in shock, and asked anxiously, who is fighting? For what? Basehu wiped her tears and carefully glanced at Zhang Minjiu. Zhang Minjiu? For the second lady. Old Mrs. Su asked. Basehu's mouth moved twice, but he dared not speak. The 2 sons of Hoya and Yuan, 15-year-old Jianjiu and 13-year-old Zhang Xian, both of them are now attending the Imperial College. They are the bottom of their grades. They are representatives of ignorance. Fighting with others is even more commonplace. Do you want to say that these 2 dudes are fighting for Zhang Minjiu? The Zhang family in the flower hall can't figure it out, it doesn't make sense. Say, Zhang Minjiu looked at Basehu and asked in a low voice, you don't blame you for things, you don't need to be afraid of Basehu. The 3rd son of Wei Xiang's family is quarreling with my son. Basehu wiped on tears again. The 3rd son of Wei Xiang scolded you. No, old Mrs. Su was surprised and angry, still a little dazed. The son of the Wei family knows my lady. Zhang Minjiu is not a good thing for peace, but old lady Su dared to use her own head to guarantee, this second girl in her family and the 3rd son of Wei Xiangfu must not know each other. Minjiu knows where the gate of Wei Xiangfu is going. Zhang Yui was also stunned. Zhang Minjiu narrowed her eyes. As soon as Basehu talked about Wei Xiang, she understood that Wei Lanzi, the eldest lady of Wei Xiangfu, was Zhao Lingxiao's delightful person. In the last life, Wei Lanzi married Zhao Lingxiao as the side wife. People all over the world said that these 2 are really emotional and heavenly, they only envy Mandarin ducks and not immortals, and they all scolded her Zhang Minjiu for ruining this fairy marriage. What's this, in this life? The marriage has just begun, she has already been infamy. The 3rd son of Wei said that the second lady is married to the 1st son of Tishan Wang. Yes, yes, Basehu stammered for a long time, and finally said under the stare of Mrs. Su, said our second lady is shameless, what kind of candle fire is? What's the matter, it's not a good thing anyway. Candle fire. Zhang Yui stunned, what kind of curse is this? Oh, Zhang Minjiu sighed, it means that I want to compete with the sun and the moon, and my face is so big that I can't count it. Here, Zhang Yui was dumbfounded, here, why is the 3rd son of the Wei family cursing so bad? Ouch! Old Mrs. Su jumped up from the chair, and ran out of the flower hall. Wei San, the deflated calf, turned him upside down. Milk! Zhang Minjiu chased after the old lady, her old lady is going to fight. Zhang Yui hadn't figured out what the old lady was going to do at this moment, but this did not prevent her from rushing to chase the old lady and ran out. When all 3 of them ran out of the Anyuan Ho mansion, the butler Wang Dekai had a bitter face, went into the flower hall and walked in front of Mr. Zhang, and asked in a low voice, Old lady, don't you go and see? Old man Zhang slowly raised his eyes to look at his housekeeper, and said slowly, I'm going to use it. I don't use words. When the 3 children ran out like a dog, no one turned to look at him. One glance. Wang Dekai. Yes, old lady, you should just rest, you are really useless. Fenjiangmen Street, where the Imperial College was located, was crowded with people at the moment, and it was extremely lively. There are young students who are pulling each other and shaking their fists, there are onlookers who clap and applaud each other, and there are good deeds who help both sides yell. Of course, the masters have all started fighting, and the family members who are waiting for the master to go to school can't be idle, so the fighting is fierce on the side of the little masters, and the people on this side are also their own masters. Pull away, pull the people away with me. Master Ju Suhi, who is in charge of the Imperial College, is 70 years old this year. After being helped by his servants, he almost fainted at the scene. The old man kept shouting, his voice trembling, he only hated that he was not younger than 40 or 50 years old, and personally went forward to teach him these humiliating evildoers. It's not that no one stepped forward, but at this moment, both sides of the fight were red eyes, and the people on both sides copied the guy. What is this called? This is called gathering crowds with weapons. If you do this in the Imperial City, if more than 10 people fight with weapons, you can be charged with a shock. Is this something that can be done by a few people? This is the Jimin Admiral's mansion. Stop, stop. Stop all to the old man. Master Su shouted. There was a crowd of onlookers who sympathized with Mr. Su and whispered to the people around him, the old man's throat is about to scream, and no one is paying attention to him. Hearing this discussion, Mrs. Su suddenly felt difficult to breathe. No, the master is ill. The servant who was waiting for Mr. Su realized that his old man's breathing was wrong. When he looked up, he saw that his old man's complexion was faintly bluish. He hurriedly yelled, "Hurry up and call the doctor, doctor!" As a result, there was another chaos on the faculty side of the Imperial College. Old Lady Su took her 2 granddaughters and killed it at this time. Little calves, the old lady screamed and jumped out of the car. Zhang Yui was about to get out of the car, but was pulled by Zhang Minjiu. What's wrong? Zhang Yui was anxious, and the accent of her hometown came out. Sister, don't go down, so as to save Ningguo Gongfu from making trouble for you. Zhang Minjiu put her sister in the carriage, pushed the carriage door by herself, and jumped under the carriage. Ningguo Gongfu, these 4 words are like a curse. When Zhang Minjiu mentions them, Zhang Yui's head is put on the head. People outside the car will hear the crowd, people must be indispensable. If Ningguo Gongfu knew that she was here, it would still fighting with her grandmother and showing her face to this point, the old lady of Ningguo Gongfu and her mother-in-law would definitely not let her go. You, Zhang Yui slapped her claws in the car, trying to urge Zhang Minjiu twice, but her girl was gone in the blink of an eye. After Zhang Minjiu got out of the car, she couldn't see her old lady, but Miss Zhang Er didn't look for it, so she went directly to the place where the noise was highest among the crowd. There were 2 family members standing next to the car. Seeing that their second lady was also going into the crowd, the 2 looked at each other, and one of them grabbed the driver who was driving the car and said anxiously, "You stay here and take care of your grandmother." I hurriedly put the words down, and the 2 family members chased Zhang Minjiu and ran away. The coachman who was left behind was just, followed by the 20-something person. In a blink of an eye, he was left alone guarding the aunt's grandmother and the carriage. "How's it going?" Zhang Yui was anxious in the car and asked outside the car. The coachman stood outside the door of the carriage, and the honest person desperately put on a ferocious expression. He stammered and said to his aunt and grandmother, Second lady," the younger one did not see the second lady, but the old lady is scolding insulted. "Wei Ziaosaniar." Old Mrs. Su had already grabbed the sleeve of Wei Ziding, the 3rd son of the Wei family, and cursed, "I didn't know until today that you can also raise such a shameless little calf in the Wei family. Come here, you fight the old lady and me, you fight." Wei Ziding didn't check it, and was dragged by the sleeve of his left hand. Third young Master Wei turned around instinctively and wanted to hit someone with his right hand. But when he saw the person who was dragging him, San young Master Wei suddenly changed his face. The raised hand did not dare to fall. Can he beat an old lady in the street? Or the goddess of today's sage? Do you dare to move my grandma? Jianjiu, which had already been beaten out of a big bag, did not know where it came from. He yelled and jumped up and hit Wei Ziding's face with a fist. The third son of Wei only felt a pain in his nose and opened a dye shop on his face. The people in Wei Xiang's mansion saw that his third son was bloody, and he was busy rushing up, and at the same time, he was still filled with bitterness in his heart. Today, the matter was so violent that the wine for the big sacrifice was dizzy and attracted people from a street to watch the excitement. The third son was beaten with blood on his face. No matter how the master in the mansion would send the third son, they returned to the mansion. Hookin can't be done. Wei Xiangfu hit someone. The old lady Su exclaimed in full anger. You are not allowed to beat my milk. Zhang Yu also shouted. Everyone in Wei Xiang's mansion. Are these grandparents still shameless? Shameless? Is it okay to be beaten by the beating? Old Mrs. Su grabbed Wei Ziding. Zhang Yu took the opportunity to punch Wei's enemy. The people from Wei Xiang's mansion were about to step forward, and the people from Enyuanho's mansion also arrived at this time. The people who blocked Wei Xiang's mansion were not allowed to step forward, seeing that another melee was about to start. The crowd's onlookers did not think it was too much to see the excitement. They were so excited, they were dizzy to receive only hate parents for not giving themselves an extra pair of eyes. At this time, Mr. Su was forced to feed a few pills by his subordinates. Just after he was relieved, he heard his subordinates say that the old lady from the Enyuanho mansion was here and was grabbing the third son of the Wei family and yelling. The old man almost didn't back to his back again. The two gangs were fighting, and they were not idle while they were doing their hands. Therefore, listening to the scolding of the two gangs, Mr. Su has already understood what the fight was for today. The cause of the fight was the Enyuanho mansion. The second lady. This Miss N.E.R. married Zhao Lingxiao, the son of King Tishan. Isn't she careless and insulting herself? The old man Su does not make a comment, but Mrs. Su makes such a fuss. Mrs. Su is about to scold you. What grudges and grudges is the granddaughter? It's such a ruckus that everyone in the world knows that your second young lady is going to climb the Mountain King's son Gaoji. In this world, the marriage of children is always done by the man who invites a matchmaker to come and ask for marriage. What are you doing in the Enyuan mansion? The second lady of your family is going to recommend herself a pillow seat? No one in Xiaomengxiao has a self-recommended pillow seat for his daughter. Turning back, Tishan Palace came out again and said there was no such marriage. Is your second lady going to die? With regard to Mrs. Su's thoughts, we can see that in Mrs. Su's place, the second young lady in the Zhang family definitely wanted to marry Zhao Lingxiao, and it was not just Mrs. Su. Few people present did not think that way. Confused. Mrs. Su hated. My lord, Miss Zhang Er is here too. The man with the Imperial College squeezed out of the crowd at this time and ran to Mr. Su to report. The old man Su's panting almost made it again, fuzzy, confused. The old man stomped his feet this time. Milk. Zhang Minjiu ran to her old lady crying. Are you still hitting my sister? Zhang Yu shouted again, his fists raining down on Wei Ziding. Me. Wei San Gongzi wanted to shout. San Gongzi, Zhang Minjiu hid his face and said to Wei Ziding in tears, I never knew you, so why bother to insult me? Yu Wei family is a century-old family, but my Zhang family also asks that I am innocent. People, how can you be insulted by me and insulted by you? When Zhang Minjiu cried, the fighting scene suddenly became quiet. A young lady who had not been out of the cabinet was crying bitterly in the street. Rao is that people from Beijing are more knowledgeable than people from other places, and I haven't seen a few. Poor my father who led the army for the country. He eats and sleeps for the sake of loyalty to the saint and protects me from generation to generation." Zhang Minjiao cried and burst into tears. Miss Zhang Er looked good, and her voice was good. The crying voice made people feel pity when they heard it. "Yu San Gongzi is studying at the Imperial College with peace of mind, why do you want to deceive my brother and me? Do you have to make my old lady come forward?" Old Mrs. Su and Zhang Yu were both stunned at this time. Where is this one of their own going to make a fuss? This ancestor of my own family has never liked to cry. Now this person who cries into tears and makes people look at me very poor, is his own Zhang Minjiao? "Shizi," said a middle-aged man who looked like an attendant in a tea house next to the street, whispering to the young man sitting by the window, "That is An Yuanho's second daughter Zhang Minjiao. Zhao Lingxiao's jade crown and hair, a plain spring lining, sitting leaning against the window, looks a little lazy, but the corners of his eyes and eyebrows are all expensive. This lady is going to ruin Wei San." Shiza the master sighed softly, and Miss Zhang Er was crying with rain, but her mind was poisonous. Listening to what Miss Zhang Er said, An Yuanho Ye worked hard for the country. Wei Ziding, the master of the family, took this opportunity to take advantage of the power of the family to frighten his mother with exhaustion, beat his son, and still embarrassed him. For his daughter's reputation, if this notoriety is realized, there is no need to wait for Zhang Shiqiu to come back to seek justice, because Wei Xiongfu is afraid that there will be no place for Wei Ziding. The good reputation accumulated in the family for several generations over a century of time has made you corrupt? My son, when it comes to marriage, should I go back and ask the prince? The attendant asked in a low voice at this time. My marriage is decided by the elders in my family. Zhang Minjiao hid his face in the street downstairs and cried, "Now my grandfather and grandmother in my family have not spoken. My father is far away from home. Why should I marry someone? No matter how good," the son of the third son Wei said, "I only ask you, this man is the only man in this world, and there is no one else in the world to marry the daughter of the world." That's it. Mrs. Su finally regained consciousness at this time, helping her voice. A good man in this world died to the point where he is the only one left, the son of King Tishan? My granddaughter's marriage is due to my grandmother's sake. She worries. What's the matter with you, the third kid from the Wei family? Are you not going to school at the Imperial College, and changed your job to be a matchmaker? Wei San Gongzi turned purple. Do you have a marriage certificate? Zhang Minjiao asked, or did you see the matchmaker with your own eyes and went to the door of my Anyuanho mansion? Wei Ziding was speechless. How did he get evidence of what he had heard? Zhao Lingxiao in the tea house put down the tea cup she was holding in her hand, and said lightly, "She doesn't want to marry me." What? The attendant couldn't believe it. How big is Zhang Minjiao's face? It was her turn to pick them out. Still can't pick it up? On the street, Mr. Su, supported by two servants, staggered to the side of both parties involved. Okay, don't beat it, Mrs. Su scolded her grandson Jianjiao. Your father is a military commander, you are not. These three boys are taller than you, stronger than you just use him as a drum, except for the pain in your hands. What can you do? You idiot is beating him on the back. Everyone heard that. As soon as the old lady's upper lip touched her lower lip, the third son of Wei was charged with another crime. He used the big to bully the younger and asked the third son, if you want a face? However, everyone will look at Wei San Gongzi's face again. The old lady is really a ruthless person who is not afraid to speak badly. He does not slap someone in the face. Your grandson beats Wei San Gongzi's face as a dyeing workshop. You pretend to see it. No, this is a human officer? Zhang Yu closed his fist. His father was a general, but he was not, so after this fist was swiped, Zhang Yu did have a pain in his hand. Running back to his grandmother, young Master Zhang thought about it. He took another step and stood in front of Zhang Minjiao. He didn't need to worry about him. He was a figure who could do the whole Wei Xiongfu by himself. The second sister can't, he has to protect his second sister. This kid is stubborn and ignorant, Mr. Su told Wei Ziding. When Zhang Minjiao listened to Mr. Su's words, he understood that Mr. Su was going to protect Wei Ziding. She had just buttoned so many hats on Wei Ziding. The old man said that the child was not sensible, and wanted to fool the matter. Mr. Su did this, Zhang Minjiao can understand. Good student, bad student, if you are a husband, who are you protecting? Wei Ziding is a person who is studying the 8 classics and will go to the imperial examination field in the future. What about her family? Jian Jiu is the little boy who is messing around. Can Mr. Su protect it? Aren't you hurrying to apologize? Mrs. Su urged Wei Ziding at this time. Wei Ziding stood still. He was the son of Wei Xiangfu, and he also had a temper. Mr. Su was very popular. Children fight, and apologize if they are wrong. Knowing the mistake can make a lot of improvement, someone in the crowd said at this time. Zhang Minjiao went along and found that this scribe was dressed up, with a fair complexion and short beard, but he was a guest by Zhao Lingxiao's side. Zhang Minjiao lowered her head and sneered in her heart. You see, it was Zhao Lingxiao who was protecting Wei Lanzi and protecting the Wei family. Wei Ziding obviously knew this guest. Seeing this guest winked at him, Wei San Gongza looked towards the tea house on the street. Zhang Minjiao also glanced at the tea house. In front of the window on the second floor facing the street, the man only showed a small part of his face, but that was enough. It turned out that the host was sitting in the tea house and watched the whole scene. I'm sorry, Wei Ziding looked down at the people in the tea house and acknowledged it. Old lady, Zhang Yui's husband, Shen Qi, the second son of Ningguo Gongfu, was cleared by a few tall servants and squeezed in from the crowd. Shen Qi has a disability in his feet. He walked a little bit limpingly, with sweat on his face. Why are you here? Mrs. Su felt sorry for her second grandson-in-law. Old lady, are you okay? When Shen Qi arrived, he asked the old lady if she was good or bad. Oh, the old lady was about to cry again. She couldn't make the Wei family cheap. When she didn't know, this kid was the biggest enemy of her 2 grandchildren in the Imperial College. Whenever her 2 grandsons were disciplined and punished in the Imperial College, there would be Wei Sanner who would pick things up inside. Zhang Minjiao stretched out her hand and shook her head at the old lady. The old lady dissatisfied, just forget it. Brother-in-law is the master, Zhang Minjiao whispered. Zhang Ruqiu is not in the capital, and the old man at home does not come forward. Jianjiu Zhangxian is not old enough to set up a family. Shen Qi arrived at this time. This is her brother-in-law who is leading the Zhang family. This is good. The Zhang family has to cognizant. Shen Qi glanced at Zhang Minjiao very quickly. His sister-in-law is unflattering, but she is very sensible today. Kneel down. Mr. Su scolded Wei Ziding at this time. Wei Ziding was still hesitating. Mr. Su was kicked in his knees, and he was kicked to the ground. Cow the head to make amends for the old lady, Mrs. Su ordered at Wei Ziding. Today this matter has reached this point. It can be broken to invite the old lady of Wei Xiangfu. They are all old people. No one can say who is old. If anyone is disturbed and tired by juniors, but the old ladies of Wei Xiangfu and Su Lao, the wife is incomparable, the one who is not as capable as the old Mrs. Su can survive. What to do then? Then only apologizes for the guilty, satisfying Mrs. Su. Old Mrs. Su actually had a risk at this time. Anyway, Mrs. Su can't kill Wei Sanner in the street, right? Can't bear it, Mrs. Su rolled her eyes. Grandma, Shen Qi whispered to Mrs. Su. Brother-in-law will end this matter. Zhang Minjiao pulled her own old lady and said, Milk, let's go back to the car and wait, there is a brother-in-law, the third son of Wei dare not move our Dalan anymore. Brother Shen's mouth twitched. Everyone. Second miss, your young master Zhang really didn't suffer much. Can't you let the third young master Wei of the Wei family go before you leave? The crowd onlookers all sympathized with third young master Wei when they saw this. In just such a short time, how many bowls had been pinned on his head? Hey, that's not right, Zhang Minjiao pulled into the car and sat in the car. The old lady Su suddenly slapped her thigh, and forced Zhang Yui to stop asking about the situation. The old lady asked Zhang Minjiao anxiously, I only saw Dalang just now. Ah, where is Zhang Xian's little calf? Zhang Minjiao was taken aback. By the way, she didn't see her little brother Zhang Xian just now. You have been there for a long time, haven't you seen my little brother? Zhang Yui asked incredulously. No, I have to look for it. Mrs. Su jumped off the car again. If Zhang Xian was badly injured this time and suffered a big loss, then she still can't let the little deflated calf of the Wei family go. It's not something that can be done with a few heads. Zhang Minjiao followed her old lady out of the car. Before she could stand firmly under the car, she heard the voice of her younger brother Zhang Xian, and Zhang Ershao shouted, Milk! Why are you like this? These little calves who have lost their conscience. Old Mrs. Su cried out directly when she saw her little grandson at a glance. Zhang Minjiao also choked up when seeing her little brother. Zhang Xian's head was swollen and too as big as usual, his nostrils were stuffed with cloth, his eyes were swollen into two seams, the corners of his mouth were scabs, and the clothes on his body were stained with blood and dust, and the original color could not be seen. Now, this looks too miserable. Who beat you like this? The old lady Su was furious, and immediately stretched out her hand to Zhang Xian, wanting to avenge Zhang Xian. Old lady, the people who beat him are still lying in the hospital. Someone beside him smiled at this moment. Hey! The old lady Su looked up, only to realize that there was a person standing beside Zhang Xian at this moment. Seeing this person was still holding her brother Xian's hand, the old lady looked at this person again. At a glance, he then said, the old man looks familiar with him. The one holding Zhang Xian's hand is a young son, dressed in an indigo embroidered spring lining, looks like a person in a painting, and can be seductive with only a pair of peach eyes. Look at Mrs. Su. In his eyes, this one is no worse than the famous Titian Wang Shizi. Such a gentleman, I have seen it and I can't remember who it is. The old lady is a little confused. Is she really confused and can't remember? The young man smiled and wanted to salute Mrs. Su, but before he was here to bow and salute, Zhang Xian opened his mouth and said, Milk, he is the grandfather of Yu Guo Gongfu, you are not the old lady of Yu Guo Gongfu. No. The smile that had just appeared on Mrs. Su's face froze. She really knew Wu Lao Taijun of Yu Guo Gongfu. Not only did she know each other, she and Wu Lao Taijun were old sisters, but it was a pity that she was old. My sister has passed away for 3 years. As for the elder of the Yu Guo Gongfu, looking at the immortal person in the painting before her, Mrs. Su was not very good. Yu Guo Gong Mansion is also the clan family. The elder in the mansion is surnamed Zhao, named Ling Yun, and written by Zilu, the famous dude of the capital city, the ancestor of eating, drinking, and playing, the head of a group of prodigal sons, such a bastard, such a picture. Appearance? God didn't open his eyes, or when he made this one, he suddenly went crazy? Second sister, Zhang Xian called Zhang Minjiao again at this time, saying, Brother Zilo helped me and my brother this time. Although he was beaten as a pig head, Zhang Ershao was very proud because he beat him. Those who were beaten worse by him. Zhang Minjiao was not very good at this time, she recognized this person. In her previous life, her corpse was thrown in Wujiao mountain by the ripped soldiers, and there was no black and white impermanence to collect her soul. Her soul could only stay by the corpse for many years, watching her corpse blown by the wind and sun. And finally turned into bones a little bit, and finally flowers grew between the fingers of the bones, and finally waited for the person who buried the bones for himself. Old lady, Zhao Lingyun was complimenting Zhang Xian with Mrs. Su at this time. This one smiled, his beautiful eyebrows curled, and the smile spread from the corner of his mouth. The peach blossom rain in March is just such an artistic conception. Just what this beautiful person said made people shook their heads. Brother Xian is not a disadvantage, the boys who beat him are all fainted in the hospital, Brother Xian just looks miserable. At this point, Master Zhao lowered his voice specially, and said to the old lady, the doctor in the medical hall said, Brother Xian is just a skin and flesh wound, and it will be fine after a few days. Those few will need to be raised for a month. The old lady said, in that case, my family will lose money. How can it be? Master Zhao hurriedly whispered, I know the doctor, and I've talked to the doctor, and said that Brother Xian's injury was serious. Putting Zhang Xian's injury more serious, the Zhang family not only didn't need to lose money, but they could also ask someone for medical money. The old lady immediately looked at Zhao Lingyan in a pleasing eye. Second sister. Just when the old lady wanted to praise Zhao Lingyan for doing a good job, Zhang Xian yelled, with her chest puffed out, as if fighting a cock. I'm going to die, the old lady was screamed by the little grandson. While scolding Zhang Xian, she turned her head to look at Zhang Minjiu. When she glanced over, the old lady turned pale and exclaimed, my Minjiu er. Zhang Minjiu had a splitting headache, and her eyes turned black for a while. She stretched out her hand to hold on to the frame so that she could stand up and not let herself fall to the ground, but the severe pain of broken tendons and cracked bones came out of the bones. It spread all over the body. Miss Zhang Er didn't touch the frame of the car, and she fell to the ground. Before the scenery in front of her was completely dark, she saw Zhao Lingyun panicking behind her old lady, running towards her, and then Miss Zhang Er again fainted once. There is an old locust tree in Wujiao Mountain. In one summer, half of the tree was scorched by a thunderstorm, but the old locust tree still survived, and it lasted 100 years in the mountain. Under this old locust tree, Zhang Minjiu had been guarding her own bones as an earth-binding spirit for many years. I don't know the years in the mountains. Earlier, Zhang Minjiu was counting the 4 seasons, but after 3 years of counting, Zhang Minjiu stopped counting. Because one day, after seeing the new growth of grass over her bones when the spring came again, Zhang Minjiu suddenly wanted to understand one thing: a ghost does not need to count the years and months. People have to count their own age, they have to count their spring and summer growth, autumn harvest and winter storage. A ghost does not need to eat or drink, no longer grows, and what is the purpose of counting life? Everything in this world has anything to do with you? However, ghosts will still be infested by wind, thunder, rain, and snow. Wind and rain will kill their bones, thunder will be shocked, and frost and snow will make bones chill. Zhang Minjiu also has to thank the soldiers who abandoned her body here. These people at least abandoned her body under the tree. The old tree that has grown in the mountains for 100 years, the branches and leaves are enough to shield her from the hot sun, otherwise Zhang Minjiu will only depend on it. Ghosts that live on bones have to suffer from moxibustion in the scorching sun. I don't know when it started. Zhang Minjiu floated under the old locust tree, looking forward to one thing all day long. I hope that someone with good intentions will come here and see her corpse here, so that she can be kind to bury her in the soil and let her ghost life can be peaceful. Day by day, year after year, hunters and herb gatherers have walked nearby, but no one has ever approached this old locust tree. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the 4 seasons cycle. When Zhang Minjiu has forgotten her name when she was alive, 2 people finally walked under the locust tree. This is the master and the servant, but their appearance and dress are very poor. The master's forehead was stabbed with a prisoner character. His hair was stained with frost on the temples, and his bones stood out. One of his hands was stretched out. It was springtime. This person's hand, his frostbite hadn't recovered yet, his fingers were red and swollen, the palms and backs of the hands were cracked all over, as if they had been webbed by spiders. This person had suffered a lot at first sight. Master, we have to go to the west. We can't delay time, the servant behind the master urged again and again. This man had whip marks on his exposed arm, and the blood was fresh, apparently just recently after being beaten. Those few kills didn't lie to me, it's this old locust tree that is half scorched. The master knelt down and stretched out his hand to pull the vine that was entwined with Zhang Minjiahu's bones. Looking down at her corpse, Zhang Minjiahu realized that a few wild flowers had grown in the hands of her corpse. They were bright red, and they didn't know their names, but they were unexpectedly beautiful. The man found a copper button the size of a fingernail next to the bones and scraped off the copper rust. After reading the words on the copper button, the man called his servant to help. The master and servant had been busy for a long time, removing Zhang Minjiahu's bones from the lush vines with bare hands, and dug a deep hole under the tree with bare hands. "Master, you still have sores on your hands, come on small." The servant who was younger than his master saw the blood on his master's hand dripping into the soil and couldn't help but tell his master. "It doesn't matter," the master seemed to know nothing of pain. He only raised his hand to wipe the blood on his body, turned around and picked up a skeleton to put it in the pit. Look at the bones in his hand and the loess in the pit. This master lay down the bones and took off his fairly clean outer lining. Seeing her bones wrapped in an outer lining by this person, and then carefully put into the pit, Zhang Minjiahu breathed a sigh of relief, and she was finally able to go into the soil for peace. "Your uncle and uncle have been looking for you for these years," the master put the bones in the pit, and said, kneeling and talking to the bones, "I saw them at the ferry crossing in Sunzhou half a month ago. Later, they will definitely find this mountain, and I will leave a message to the old man in the tea shed beside the official road outside the mountain. Let him tell you, uncle and uncle, you were buried here by me. Brother Yuer and brother Xian fell out with Lord Ho for you. Now brother Yuer has gone to the north side to join the army, and brother Xian is guarding the Ho mansion in the capital. Your old lady is in good health. Zhao Qingrong won't die for a day, and your old lady won't close her eyes. Your old lady's body is not as good as before. Since I beat you, the old lady has never seen Master Ho again. When I left Beijing, your father led troops to the East China Sea. He has rarely been in the capital in these years. I and your brother Xian are very common, but I haven't seen him once. Master, are the bones from the concubine of Tishan Palace?" The servant squatted beside his master, rubbing the mud on his hands, while whispering, "She is not as good as the master. It's already the worst for the second master to be a prisoner." "What kind of concubine?" The master frowned and shook her head. "She is not a sinner in Tishan Palace, she is the second lady in Enyuanho Palace." The master flipped the brass clasp in his hand and said, "No wrong, Zhang Minjiahu, it's engraved on it. Zhang Minjiahu." The loess was swayed from the man's hands, gradually covering the Senran bones. A gust of wind blew in the mountains, and Lin Hai whistled. The dead soul who had forgotten her name in life, was shaken by the wind, and then she remembered her name. She was Zhang Minjiahu.